This is something that we talk a lot about. But here's the interesting thing. We often don't have a definition for it. So I'm going to ask you to unmute or write in the chat box, what is leadership? How do you define leadership? What is it that we're talking about? At the beginning of the year, Dixie and I defined consciousness, which was also a fun exploration, right? How many different facets there are of that. So how do you define leadership? I'm going to see if I can do I can never get my chat box to work. There we go. Let's feel free to, oh, okay. Yes, thank you, Colleen, for that. Yeah, so leadership. I don't want you to see that definition yet. So what do we have on leadership? And if you want to just pop off mic and speak it into the room, please do that if you don't feel like typing. Leading by example and guidance, says Tony Sparks. Thank you. Okay. Leading by example.
I'm thinking that it's like LeadHERship. So basically there is something in movement, and you're basically the person then that guides the ship, so it stays in the best waters to get to the destination.
Nice. Very nice, Helena. Thank you for that. Anna says, having influence, being able to guide others. Oh, I didn't hear. Someone else wanted to jump in?
Oh, yeah, I was going to jump in. I started typing in, then I think it's the ability to have resources and people and all lead them in a concerted effort and direction.
Okay, so ability to have resources and offer them. All right. You. And Anna says, having influence and being able to guide others. Okay. Amy, broadly influencing others. Okay. All right. So those are some interesting aspects. And we're all talking about little snippets, right, of things. If somebody said to you, what is the earth? Well, where do we start with that one, right? It's kind of a similar thing, but it's helpful to know what's in the room when we're talking about something. Peggy says, corralling individuals to move in a direction. Corralling is a good word, Becky. Thank you. All right. So this is what Webster Dictionary has to say. If any of you remember, they're actually books. There's a book called a dictionary, and it has pages, which I absolutely love. And this is what it said about leadership: the office or position of a leader, capacity to lead, the act or an instance of leading. So how if you find that useful, raise your hand. If you find that not useful, raise your hand. Okay, I'm with you all in that boat. All right, so let's continue on, because I have a very specific definition of leadership that guides me. Similar, as Dixie said at the beginning, it's so beautiful that Linda Fisk brought us together, because we have a lot of parallels and we approach things from different angles, and we're pointing at the same beauty. So let's look at the definition of leading, because leadership didn't get us anywhere. So we're going to look at leading. All right. So this says coming or ranking first, exercising leadership, which we still don't know what it is, providing direction or guidance. A lot of you have nailed that one, right? Given most prominent display. Okay. Do we now know what we're talking about? Raise your hand if we now know what we're talking about. Now, isn't it interesting? Like, this is a word that is thrown everywhere all the time, and we still don't even know what we're talking about. All right. We're going to get there, though. Saturday morning. If you have a Monday through Friday week, just imagine Saturday morning. You get to sleep in, right? Just relax, have your coffee, play with your dog, be with your partner, or take a walk, whatever you want to do. Your day off, if it's not Saturday. Now imagine, some of you know me, but imagine you didn't. Let's say I call you and I say, I need you to come and help me build a barn at 6 a.m. on Saturday morning. And you've had a 50-hour work week. How prone are you to show up to do that? Honestly, who's going to say, absolutely, I'll be right there? Wow, that's kind of disappointing. No, I'm joking. Okay, so now imagine. Dixie, you're muted. I can't hear you. Wait, Dixie, unmute. We just missed what you said.
Oh, I thought I did. Maybe I muted again. I said somebody has to say for you, Leezá, anything. So I will be the for you. Yeah.
Be that
If
be
we're
that
best buds,
placeholder.
most definitely, says Deborah. Yes.
Thank you for that. But in general, right, it's like your time off. Why are you going to do that? Now, let me ask you the same question. Imagine the person or people, if it's more than one, whom you love most in this world, like the person closest to your heart, absolutely adore, you know, it's your heart outside of your body. And they asked you to be there Saturday morning because they needed you to do something. How many people would say yes to that? Right. Wow. Anonymous. So what's the difference? Unmute. What's the difference?
A relationship.
Relationship. Any other thoughts? So I love it when Helen is on a call because she just snags it right at the outset. All right. So it is. It's relationship, right? You may like me, but maybe you didn't even know me. But for somebody you care about, when you have a relationship with someone and they ask you something, you are present to them. That relationship is a physical, energetic bond between you. So let's talk about what relational leadership means as I define it, okay? And as others, I've kind of collated, but this has been my experience from years of working with people who are in positions and are doing really amazing work and are able to lead teams that feel happy and enthusiastic. This is a definition that I've landed on. To recognize one's excellence, the highest and best of oneself. To acknowledge the highest and best in another, and in that relating, to empower them to contribute and to guide the process to a common goal. So the first relationship we have is with whom?
Ourselves.
Absolutely. Right? If we don't start there, if we create this fallacy that I only care about other people, it's simply not the truth. Right? Or if you are putting all your focus first on other people and not yourself, you are not serving them, because you cannot bring your highest and best until and unless you are connected first with the excellence and the highest in yourself. Okay. And by the way, you don't have to agree with any of this. I'm laying this out for consideration. Okay. And we can talk about it. All right. So let's talk about relational leadership for a second. An incredible example. Does anybody know who this man is? Ernest Shackleton. Has anybody heard of Ernest Shackleton?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have a couple people. So I'm going to go over this. This man is the icon of leadership. And he had one failed expedition in 1914. Failed expedition. And he's considered the icon of leadership. Now, why would that be? Let me give you some of the facts. In 1914, he was commanded by the Crown to discover the Antarctic, by the British Crown. He took his ship, which is an actual picture that you're looking at here, and it got crushed in the Odell Sea in ice. As we know, ice expands. It captured the ship, and they couldn't move for a year. He had 28 men altogether, including himself, on this ship. After 1 year of being on the ice, there was no Gore-Tex, there was no fleece, there were no jet boils, right? This was just, they had spears, they had whatever wood they could get if it wasn't taking apart the ship. There were seal, penguins, they had polar bears to deal with. There was a lot of danger and very few resources under the harshest of conditions. So after this year of surviving that, he paddled with all 28 men 658 miles to Elephant Island. In dinghies, they had small boats. When they arrived at Elephant Island, he left 22 of the men, and he took 5 other men with him to yet another island, South Georgia Island, because where they landed at Elephant Island wasn't inhabited. Gets to South Georgia Island with these 5 men. They have almost no clothing left. Shoes are in shreds, almost no materials, and they have to cross 2 miles over glaciers to get to the station, the ranger station on the opposite side. He returned then after that 3 months later to the men on Elephant Island and returned back to England with all 28 men alive after 2 years of being on the ice. So, how is that possible? And why was he the icon of leadership? This man created with his people a team that was so strong that even in his absence, they continued. He had them, they were disciplined. They had to get up at a specific time every day. They had chores to do. He did conflict resolution. He did not tolerate gossip. He made sure that he knew every man on that ship, their families, their children, what was in their heart was important to them. They had to do sports. He had them playing soccer out on the ice. And most importantly, he had a relationship with each one of those men, and he made sure they had functioning and healthy relationships with one another. And that's the way that he was able to do what he did and bring all 28 of those men home. So that foundation of relational leadership is not a poo-pooed soft skill. It's absolutely concrete. And today it's proving that also in studies, but we'll get to that in just a second. All right. I'm going to ask you to take a moment, if you have paper or if you want to do it on your laptop, and just write the answer to this question for yourself. Oops, hold on a second. I had that in there twice. There we go. What is your why? What moves you in your work with the people that you work with? Whether you're a leader of teams or you're an entrepreneur and you are so more or less a one-person show. But what is your why? Write that down for yourself. If you want to share it, you can, but this is just for yourself right now. We're going to go into conversation later. What moves you? And I'm going to suggest if you don't have an answer to this question, find the time to answer it. Because it does impact, even if you don't know it, everything you do. Whether you have an answer and you're not clear on it, that has an impact. Or you don't have an answer, that has an impact. Or you do know your why, and that has an impact. So clarify this for yourself. And we're going to get to why that's important, that awareness of self. And I can't see, Dixie, can you see the chat box? Because I can't see that when I'm on here.
Just go down and click on chat and it will appear in a
my mouse. I don't know if it's
it won't do that.
No,
yes, I can. So
let's see.
Deborah, that came just to me. I don't know if you want me to share it. If you do, pop it back into everyone. Molly says connection, discovery of truth.
Lovely. All right. Excellent. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, Deborah did share that. I wasn't sure
it was my
if she wanted that shared
mantra.
publicly, but really a mantra for her living. I choose to create and lead a living legacy that awakens thy love in all hearts.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. Thank you. Question you might want to take with you is how does my why express itself in very practical ways?
Yeah, Peggy says, seeing my dreams become reality.
And she certainly has done that in her lifetime, that's for sure. All right. Thank you. Okay. So I said, in people in my day, I don't know, I think we have younger people on the call, but they used to call things like this soft skills, right? It would be poo-pooed by the powers that be. Like, we don't need that. Let's just get to the bottom line. Let's just get to productivity and effectiveness. Interestingly enough, science is now proving, studies are proving, human capital, if you want to call it that, human dynamics are proving that what we're talking about today has nuts and bolts results. Okay. So Google, all heard of that company, asked, why do some teams soar to success and others struggle? So this was within their organization. And I think we can all agree that Google has been somewhat successful on the globe, right? A powerful leader. They talked to 180 Google teams. So company-wide, worldwide. Oops. See, that's what it does. It won't allow, if I do that with the chat box. Oh, I'm so sorry. There we go. 180 teams. They did over 200 interviews and they analyzed 250 characteristics in all of this, right? And this is what they came up with. 5 keys, 5 elements that led to successful teams. And when they were absent, those teams struggled. Okay? What do you think number 1 was? Just off the top of your head. You can unmute if you want.
And while people are unmuting, I want to read Colleen's mantra, which is beautiful.
Please.
My purpose in life is to build the talents and skills I have and combine them with others through strategic relationships to affect a measurable change in our community while leaving a replicable path for others. And Deborah, your settings just keep coming back to me, but I think your answer to the question that Leezá just posed is vision.
Yes, I see it in the main chat. And that's a
there we go. Reposted.
Yeah.
Openness
sounds like a mission statement. I'm sorry, excuse me, Dixie.
Yeah, so Colleen has communications. Deborah says vision, posted it again. Tony Sparks says leading with empathy and clarity. There. Now we've got all the chat.
Okay.
Openness to really, well, what we just saw, open to work with other people, to be open to their input and their output, and
psychological safety.
Dan has to be the A student in the class.
Is that it?
It is. Deborah, just let me go to this. So Peggy says goals. Deborah says love. Amy says knowing the unique value of self and others, which is all contained. Everything you have said is contained in what Dan said. The number one thing is psychological safety. And we're going to talk about what that means, okay? Because it's incredibly valuable. Dan, you're the A student.
Excuse me, can I leave now?
Yes, you can if you want to.
He quizzed out. He's good.
Okay. Hey, what a lucky guess. Okay.
No worries. So the second, dependability. Third, structure and clarity. Fourth is meaning, that the work they do has importance for themselves. And fifth, that it has an impact, that they can see that their work has an impact. So these are the distinguishing factors of successful teams.
Can I add two others?
You can, but this is what Google came up with.
Yeah, well, they left out respect and they left out status. And for a team to have psychologically safe, to be psychologically safe, it has to respect the opinions of everyone. Not that it has to do what everyone wants, but it has to be respectful to listen enough and acknowledge. And the other thing is about status. If a team has a person who wants to dominate because of title, that will diminish the team actually contributing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the flip side of what would be missing. So, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about, because this is the question that was asked. Can we take risks on this team without feeling insecure or embarrassed? And that is the safety, that they know that the respect is there, the safety is there, the openness. Some of you said love, if you want to use that word, which I use freely, I'm happy to admit. But that people were asked these questions, and the ones that say, absolutely, without a doubt, we can do that. Those are the ones that are successful. So on a scale of 1 to 10, from feeling insecure in your work environment, even if you're an entrepreneur with your clients, with your vendors, whomever you have, where do you lie? From 1 being you feel insecure, and 10 being absolutely 100% safe to be completely who and how I am in the world. Where do you lie for yourself? Just recognize that number. If you want to put it in the chat box, you can. But just recognize that number. Great. So we have a lot of high numbers here. Excellent. It's interesting, when I do this in organizations, the numbers they hover around 5. Yeah. Because then the next question I would ask is, what would your team say? The people you work with, how safe do you think they feel? What would be their answer? The people that did answer in the chat box, why don't you put that number in there? How safe do you feel like your team, even if it's your lateral people, vendors, clients, and so forth, how safe do you think they feel? 10, 10. Nice. 7 to 8. Okay. A little bit lower. Molly's 8, 7. Okay. So a question to ask if there were a discrepancy is, why is the discrepancy there? Why is my number where it is? And why are others where they are? Okay. And we're going to talk about how do we create psychological safety and what exactly does that mean? Okay. And a main component of it is emotional intelligence, right? So when we can understand others. Dan Goldman, who wrote Emotional Intelligence way back, I think it was in the 90s, coined this term emotional intelligence and brought it to the world in such a way that it was scientifically founded, so the people that usually poo-pooed things like this couldn't. And these are the terms, the factors that he came up with, and a number of you have already shared them when we were speaking about leadership, interestingly enough. So the first is self-awareness, to recognize and understand our moods, emotions, what drives us, and how I affect other people with how I am. Self-regulation. So how do I control that, right? How do I modulate that? How do I express that? Or if I have impulses, how do I deal with those? Okay. And if I have judgment, do I speak those? Do I hold those back? Do I get rid of my judgments? Just how do I regulate myself or manage myself? Manage my state, if you want to use one of Tony Robbins' phrases. Motivation is the passion to work for your internal reasons. So beyond money and status, it is not externally driven, it's internally generated is motivation. Empathy is to understand the emotional makeup of other people without losing yourself. It's not relating and feeling their emotions, because you can't do that. You can only feel your own. So empathy, the way that I understand it and live it in the world, is being able to understand another person from their frame of reference so they feel safe and heard when I'm with them. And the last one is social skills. So how do I manage my relationships and network and find common ground when I'm in groups of people that perhaps have different ideas or different needs or different backgrounds? Okay. So that's emotional intelligence and literacy. And how I can talk about that is the literacy part. How versed am I in emotional intelligence? Okay. This is a little intellectual. I come back to something very fundamental that I call self-studentship. And I've shared this here before, I think. And I want to talk about that for a minute, because that, for me, this is foundational for any emotional intelligence or any action in the world or any relationship. And I'm going to bet that Ernest Shackleton was very, very high student of himself. He knew who he was, why he was there, and why he was doing what he was doing at all times. I don't think he could have been as successful if he wasn't an incredible student of himself. So the first thing is awareness of self, similar to what we just heard in emotional intelligence. There's three aspects. It's owning who I am, really taking ownership of myself. It's being honest with myself completely. And it's also honoring my value, not pushing it away, not diminishing it, not denying it, but really owning it. Second one is taking 100% responsibility for our actions. Everything we do. If there's a problem, I don't start pointing fingers. I first look at how have I participated? What's my part? Because you know what? That's the only thing we have any control over. We have influence over other things, but we only have control and 100% responsibility for our own selves. We did it again. All right, here we go. Let's try this again. And we're moving forward. There we go. Authenticity, which has three parts. One is congruent inside and out, which means when I'm on the phone with T-Mobile and I can't get a clear answer from any human being, and I'm going from machine to machine, and finally I get a human being and I'm totally frustrated, I don't try and make it look like I'm not frustrated and slap a smile on my voice. I can say to them, I've been on the phone for 12 minutes just trying to reach a human being. And this is not your fault because you're doing your job. I know that. But over here on this line, I'm frustrated with this process, right? So I haven't blamed anybody in that. I've taken responsibility, and there's a congruency because people sense that energy. Either way, if you're frustrated inside and you're putting a smile on the outside, or if you're happy inside and you're trying to tamp it down because you may not think it's appropriate, that incongruency is what people sense. To be consistent with that and to be kind, that's authentic. It's who we are. And to recognize your value and how it reflects in the world, and then to engage from that place, which comes back to relational leadership. So this basically means, has anybody here studied a foreign language, like studied it, not grew up in it, but had to study a foreign language? Yeah, exactly. You had to learn the grammar, the vocabulary, the conjugation, maybe the formal and the informal form of address. That you were a student of that language. What we're talking about is being a student of yourself.